What happens when you leave the man who gave you everything for someone you barely know? For me, it meant a knock at the door with legal papers that stripped away the life I thought I controlled. I chose wrong, and now the man I betrayed holds every card. I am Seraphine Vale, 34 years old, and until recently I thought my life was secure and predictable, with a husband who loved me deeply, and a daughter who looked at me as if I was her entire world. And yet, here I am now, confessing how everything began to fall apart the moment I convinced myself that stability was not enough for someone like me, who wanted excitement at any cost. Because Ethan Vale, my husband of almost 10 years, was a steady and decent man who worked hard at his job as an accountant and never failed to provide for our family. But in my eyes, his predictability began to feel heavy and dull, and every gesture that once comforted me slowly started to feel like a weight, pressing down until I could barely breathe without resenting his quiet routines. And when Adrian Cross appeared at my office, after being hired to consult on a short project, I felt my heart race in a way I had not experienced in years. That fleeting feeling became a seed of justification that I nurtured until it grew into full betrayal. Because Adrian was charming and unpredictable, and his attention made me feel alive in ways Ethan's steady devotion no longer could. And I told myself that life was short and passion should not be ignored, even if the cost was lying to the man who had given me everything and raised our daughter Clara with patience and care. And while my family praised Ethan for his calm strength, I whispered to my mother Pauline that he was boring and unambitious. She agreed because she never liked that Ethan was so steady, while she valued risk and indulgence. My father was long gone, so Pauline's voice weighed heavily on me. Soon, I allowed myself to think Ethan's small flaws were larger than they truly were, until every sigh and silence from him became proof in my mind that he was no longer the partner I deserved. Even though deep down I knew the truth was that I had already chosen to chase a thrill I could not sustain. And this is where everything began to unravel. It started in our family home, where life always followed the same rhythm that Ethan cherished, and I secretly resented, because evenings were filled with quiet dinners and television, while I longed for something more colourful, and I began slipping away under the excuse of late hours at the office, when in truth I just wanted to feel the thrill of being noticed by Adrian. Ethan asked once why I returned so tired, and I brushed him off, saying work was demanding, making him feel guilty for doubting me. And when he tried to be affectionate, I told him he was too serious and should let me breathe, even though he was only offering comfort. My mother Pauline said I was right to demand excitement, while Ethan's mother Margaret warned him not to ignore my distance. And our daughter Clara simply asked why I seemed so distracted, which made me uneasy, but I smiled and told her nothing was wrong. At a family barbecue, I let Adrian carry drinks for me and stand too close while everyone noticed. And I saw Ethan's expression harden though he stayed silent. And that silence made me certain I still held all the control. The turning point came when we joined friends at an upscale restaurant, where the table was full of laughter and glasses of wine, while Ethan sat quietly, and I leaned closer to Adrian every chance I got, just to feel that spark while ignoring the weight of Ethan's stare from across the table. When one of our friends teased me about looking radiant, I smiled and said it was because some people actually knew how to make a woman feel alive, and the table erupted in laughter, while Ethan shifted uncomfortably but said nothing, which I twisted, in my mind, as weakness. Later, he asked if I realized how humiliating my behavior was, and I dismissed him, saying he was insecure and should be grateful that other men found me attractive because it meant he had a prize. Margaret heard about the evening and called me shameless, while my mother, Pauline, defended me, insisting that Ethan should man up instead of sulking. Adrian seemed amused by all of it and whispered that Ethan was too soft to keep me happy, which only fueled my arrogance. And when Ethan left the restaurant before dessert, I convinced myself he would return begging. The real fracture happened during a tense dinner at our home, with both sets of parents present, where Ethan tried to keep the atmosphere calm, while I grew restless and deliberately steered conversation toward Adrian, praising how he always listened carefully at work, and saying loudly that some men understood a woman better than others. The room fell into an awkward silence as Ethan's face darkened, but I carried on as if nothing was wrong, enjoying the sting my words left behind. Margaret slammed her hand against the table and accused me of disrespecting her son, while my mother Pauline quickly defended me by saying Ethan had never been ambitious enough to keep my attention. Clara, sitting quietly at the corner, started to cry and asked everyone to stop arguing. Yet even that did not soften my pride. I told Ethan in front of everyone that if he really valued me, he would change, instead of expecting me to live in boredom, twisting the truth so he seemed responsible for my choices. Ethan excused himself halfway through the meal and left the house without returning that night. And when I later saw his study cleaned of documents, my confidence shook. After that night, Ethan became distant, and his absence gave me more space to run toward Adrian, though Adrian's enthusiasm began to fade once he realized I was no longer a secret thrill, but a woman carrying heavy chaos behind her. At the office, I lingered near Adrian, trying to capture the charm that once pulled me in, but his attention wavered, and he answered me with half-smiles while checking his phone. At home, I told Clara that her father was choosing to abandon us, twisting the truth to make him the villain, even though I knew, deep inside, that Ethan was steadying himself for something larger. Jordan refused to even look at me when he saw me at a family event, and Margaret would not let Clara visit unless Ethan came along, which only deepened the divide. Pauline still told me I was right to demand excitement, but her words sounded hollow now that Ethan's silence stretched longer each day. Then one morning at work, a stranger approached my desk and handed me an envelope in front of all my co-workers, and when I opened it, I saw divorce papers and financial notices that made my hands shake with dread. Ethan's strategy unfolded in cold offices where lawyers spoke calmly while I tried to insist he was destroying our family. Yet every receipt and message he presented showed the truth of my choices laid out in neat lines I could not deny. I accused him of ruining Clara's life and called him controlling, but he remained composed while handing over hotel bills and copies of texts. Margaret praised his dignity while Pauline ranted about lies, and Clara sat silently between us. That night my bank card was declined, proof that Ethan's quiet planning had already taken control from me. The final hearing arrived in a stark courtroom where my pleas sounded desperate and thin against the stack of evidence Ethan's lawyer calmly delivered. And though I tried to paint Adrian as only a friend, the documented trail proved otherwise. I claimed Ethan was cold and unfeeling, but the judge looked only at the records and ruled in his favor, granting him custody and the greater share of assets, while leaving me with nothing but my shame. Margaret gripped his hand proudly. Pauline stormed out furious, and Clara quietly walked away with Ethan as I sat frozen in silence. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.